It began on a frozen hill, where a little girl knelt alone in the snow, crying at her mother's grave while the world around her moved on. The headstone said the truth was settled. The paperwork said the case was closed. Every adult told her it was time to let go, but not everyone believed the ground beneath that grave was honest. Beside her stood a police dog who suddenly froze, ears sharp, nose pressed to the earth as if listening to something no human could hear. He didn't bark. He didn't move on. He dug, and what he found shattered everything the town thought it knew. Because some graves lie, some deaths are staged, and sometimes faith arrives quietly, through a child who refuses to stop believing and a loyal dog who refuses to obey a lie. What they uncovered beneath the snow would test truth, love, and the unseen hand of God. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support truly means everything to us. Snow fell steadily over Cedar Hollow, Vermont, muting the town beneath a pale hush as wind drifted through bare maples and the old cemetery breathed out cold, patient silence. Officer Tyler Reed stood at the iron gate of Cedar Hollow Cemetery, boots sinking slightly into fresh powder as if the earth itself resisted being disturbed. At 32, Tyler carried the lean, weather-sharpened frame of a man who had learned endurance the hard way. He was just over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered but not bulky, built more for stamina than brute force. A dark navy police coat hung from his frame, the fabric worn smooth at the cuffs, speckled with snow like scattered ash. Beneath a black knit cap, his hair was dark brown, kept short out of habit rather than style, and a light stubble shadowed his jaw, less an attempt at ruggedness than the result of nights when shaving felt unnecessary. His eyes were steel gray, observant and reserved, the kind that watched before judging. People in town described Tyler as quiet, dependable, and distant, though those who knew him well understood that the distance had been earned years earlier, after a winter highway collision had taken his younger brother and left Tyler with a lifelong mistrust of sudden endings. Since then he trusted routine, evidence, and his dog more than words. That dog stood at his left heel now. Harlan, a 4-year-old German shepherd, was all controlled power and intelligence, compressed into sinew and fur. His coat was a deep blend of black and dark sable brown, thick enough to hold snow along his spine without melting. He had a broad chest, long muscular legs, and a narrow waist that spoke of speed and balance. His ears stood tall and alert, never slack, and his amber eyes, sharp, unsettlingly human, missed very little. Harlan had been paired with Tyler since he was 8 months old, trained for scent detection and search operations, but what set him apart was not obedience alone, it was judgment. He did not react impulsively. When Harlan stopped, when he focused, it was because something mattered. They had not come to the cemetery for work. Tyler had taken the long route back from patrol, letting Harlan stretch his legs, letting himself breathe. Cedar Hollow was the sort of town where tragedies settled quietly into the snow rather than making noise. The cemetery sat on a gentle hill overlooking the frozen lake. Headstones staggered like teeth worn down by time. Tyler had just reached the inner path when he noticed the child. She knelt near a newer grave, small against the wide white world, her red wine-colored puffer coat far too large for her thin frame. Nora Bennett, 9 years old, had hair the color of dark chestnuts, straight and fine, slipping free from a gray wool scarf wrapped twice around her neck. Her skin was pale with a pink flush from the cold, freckles faint across her nose. She had the stillness of a child who had learned not to ask for attention. A school notebook lay open. On her knees, pages fluttering slightly in the wind, pencil clutched between gloved fingers. She was doing math problems, Tyler realized, while speaking softly to the stone before her as though it were listening. The headstone read, "Lena Bennett, loving mother, always remembered." Tyler slowed, instinctively lowering his voice when he spoke. "Afternoon," he said gently. Nora looked up, eyes a deep gray-blue rimmed red, not just from cold. She nodded politely but did not stand. Children in Cedar Hollow were taught manners early. "Hi," she said. Harlan sat automatically, posture composed, gaze shifting from the girl to the grave and back again. For a moment, everything felt ordinary, sad but ordinary. Tyler was about to suggest she head home before dusk, when Harlan's body changed. The dog rose, ears angling forward, nose lifting as he sampled the air. A low sound left his chest. Not a growl, not a bark, but something tighter, deliberate. Tyler felt the familiar tightening between his shoulders. "Harlan," he murmured. "Heel." The command went unheard. Harlan moved several paces to the right, toward an old maple tree whose bare branches clawed at the sky. He pressed his nose to the snow near the trunk, circling once, twice, then began to dig. Snow flew back in sharp arcs, claws scraping against frozen earth with urgency that sent a chill through Tyler's spine. "Harlan, stop." Tyler stepped forward, voice firm now. The dog did not even look at him. Nora stood, confusion flickering across her face. "Is he okay?" she asked. Tyler didn't answer immediately. He knelt beside Harlan, brushing snow away with his gloved hand, trying to see what had triggered the behavior. Harlan dug harder, faster, then suddenly stopped. He sat back on his haunches, chest rising and falling, eyes locked on Tyler's with an intensity that tightened his throat. That look meant found. Tyler reached into the shallow hole, fingers brushing something cold and solid beneath the soil. He eased it free, snow falling away to reveal a delicate silver bracelet. Thin but sturdy, the metal dulled by dirt. Along its surface, words were engraved in careful script. "Lena, always home." For a moment, the world narrowed to that bracelet resting in Tyler's palm. Nora stared. The color drained from her face, leaving her freckles stark against white skin. She took one unsteady step forward. That's my mom's," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but she did not cry. "She never took it off, not ever. She said it helped her remember where she belonged." Tyler looked from the bracelet to the grave, then back to Harlan, who remained perfectly still, gaze fixed on the disturbed earth, as though waiting for permission to continue. A weight settled in Tyler's chest, heavy and unwelcome. He knew procedures. He knew closed casket funerals happened for good reasons. He also knew dogs like Harlan did not dig beside graves without cause. Snow continued to fall, quiet and relentless, filling the edges of the hole even as Tyler stared at the bracelet in his hand. Somewhere deep inside, a careful, practiced voice told him this was coincidence. Another voice, older, quieter, harder to ignore, told him something was wrong. Nora hugged her coat tighter around herself. "Officer?" she asked softly. "Why would my mom's bracelet be here?" Tyler had no answer ready. He closed his fingers around the silver, feeling its weight, and looked again at the name carved into it, suddenly aware that some truths, once uncovered, refused to be buried again. Snow continued to fall as if the sky itself were trying to cover its tracks, each flake settling softly over Cedar Hollow Cemetery, muting sound and sharp edges alike. Tyler Reed stood frozen between the maple tree and Lena Bennett's grave, the silver bracelet heavy in his gloved palm, its cold weight pressing deeper than metal ever should. The wind threaded through the pines at the edge of the hill, producing a low, whispering moan that reminded Tyler uncomfortably of the night his brother died. Tires screaming, metal twisting, then silence too sudden to be natural. He had learned then that some endings arrive too clean, too quick, and were therefore lies. Harlan remained seated beside the disturbed patch of earth, posture rigid, ears forward, eyes fixed not on Tyler or the child, but on the ground itself. Snow dusted his back, clinging to the dark fur along his spine, yet the dog did not shake it off. He was working. Tyler had seen this stance dozens of times in training fields and real searches, collapsed sheds, forest ravines, abandoned cars. Harlan did not display confusion. He displayed certainty. And certainty, Tyler knew, was dangerous when it contradicted official truth. Nora Bennett stood a few steps away now, arms wrapped around herself, red coat swallowing her narrow shoulders. Up close, Tyler noticed how thin she was, how the sleeves of her gloves extended past her fingers, how her boots were scuffed and a size too large, the kind handed down by necessity rather than choice. Her dark eyes flicked between the bracelet and her mother's headstone, struggling to reconcile two realities that should not exist together. She had stopped crying, which worried Tyler more than tears ever could. Children who cried still believed the world would respond. "You said the funeral was 3 weeks ago," Tyler said gently, lowering himself to one knee so he would not loom over her. His voice was calm, practiced, the tone he used with victims and witnesses alike. "Do you remember the day?" Nora nodded. "It was snowing like this," she said, "but wetter. Grandma said it was freezing rain, not real snow yet. Everyone had umbrellas. Mine broke." "Did you see your mother?" Tyler asked, knowing the answer before the words finished forming. Nora shook her head. A lock of hair slipped loose from her scarf and brushed her cheek. "They said the fire, that there wasn't much left. They said it would be better if I remembered her how she was." Her mouth tightened. I wanted to believe them. Tyler's jaw set. The phrase was familiar, better this way, for your own good, to help you heal. He had heard it in hospitals, at accident scenes, in courtrooms. It was often used to close doors that should have remained open. Behind him, Harlan shifted slightly, nose dipping toward the soil again, inhaling slowly, deliberately, as if reading a sentence written in scent. Tyler felt a chill unrelated to the cold. Harlan was trained to detect accelerants, decomposition, human presence masked by time or damage. Fire confused many dogs. Water erased trails. But this focus meant something was wrong with the story, not just the scene. "Your mother," Tyler said carefully, "died in a fire near the lake. A storage shed, correct?" Nora nodded again. "She was cleaning it out. Old furniture from the marina. She said it smelled like oil." Tyler exhaled through his nose. Fires caused by accidents left patterns, burn marks, residue, timelines. The report had crossed his desk briefly weeks ago. He remembered thinking how fast it had been wrapped up, how eager everyone seemed to move on. Cedar Hollow didn't like questions that lingered. After the fire, he continued, did anyone return your mother's belongings to you? Jewelry, clothing? Nora hesitated. A box, she said. Some clothes, her boots, her wallet wasn't there. They said it burned. Tyler looked down at the bracelet again. Fire damaged metal, warped it, blackened it. This bracelet was cold, intact, buried beneath fresh snow beside a grave that was supposed to contain everything left of Lena Bennett. That alone should not have been possible. He slipped the bracelet carefully into an evidence bag from his coat pocket, sealing it with a practiced motion. Nora watched, eyes wide. "Am I in trouble?" she asked quietly. The question struck him harder than expected. "No," Tyler said at once. "You haven't done anything wrong." She nodded, but her shoulders remained tense. Children learned early when answers were incomplete. Footsteps crunched behind them, light and uneven. Tyler turned to see Elliot Harper, the cemetery groundskeeper, approaching from the lower path. Elliot was in his late 50s, tall but stooped, with a gray beard that never seemed fully trimmed, and hands permanently stained with earth and rust. He wore a brown canvas jacket several decades out of style, and a knit cap pulled low over thinning hair. Elliot was known in town as a gentle, solitary man, one who spoke more comfortably to trees than people, shaped by a quiet divorce and years of burying others' memories. "Afternoon, officer," Elliot said, stopping short when he noticed the disturbed ground. His eyes flicked to Nora, then to Harlan. "Everything all right?" Tyler stood, positioning himself slightly between Elliot and the hole. "Just checking something," he said evenly. "Did anyone dig near this grave recently?" Elliot frowned, lines deepening around his eyes. "No, sir. New graves get packed tight. I'd remember if anyone came back to mess with it." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "That one always felt strange." Tyler met his gaze. "Strange how?" Elliot shifted his weight. "Hard to explain. Ground settled too fast, like it wasn't holding what it was supposed to." He glanced at Nora, then looked away, uncomfortable. "Just a feeling." Harlan's ears twitched at Elliot's voice, but he did not move from his spot. Tyler thanked the groundskeeper and waited until Elliot moved on before turning back to Nora. "I need you to do something for me," he said. "Go home, it's getting cold." Nora's eyes narrowed, not in defiance, but in calculation. She was old enough to understand dismissal when she heard it. "Are you going to find out why my mom's bracelet was there?" she asked. Tyler paused. The truth was complicated. "I'm going to ask questions," he said finally. "That's all I can promise right now." Nora nodded once, sharply. "Okay." She stepped back toward the path, then stopped. "Officer Reed?" "Yes." "If my mom isn't really there," she said, gesturing toward the grave, "will you tell me? Even if it's bad?" The question lodged deep. Tyler had built his career on honesty, but honesty without proof could become cruelty. He chose his words carefully. "I won't lie to you," he said. "That I can promise." She seemed to accept that, though the acceptance looked more like preparation than comfort. She turned and walked down the hill, small boots leaving uneven prints that the snow began to erase almost immediately. Tyler remained where he was long after she disappeared from sight. He crouched beside Harlan, resting a gloved hand briefly on the dog's shoulder. The muscle beneath was warm, solid. "You're sure?" he murmured. Harlan did not look at him. His focus remained fixed, unyielding, as though the earth itself were holding its breath. Tyler straightened slowly. He knew the next steps would be unpopular. Reopening a closed case in Cedar Hollow meant friction, skepticism, paperwork that would follow him home like a shadow. But the alternative, ignoring what lay beneath the snow, felt worse. He had done that once before, trusted official answers, and buried questions with his brother. The wind picked up, sending a swirl of snow across the headstones, softening names, dates, truths. Tyler turned toward the gate, Harlan falling into step beside him at last. Behind them, the maple tree stood silent, its roots gripping secrets that refused to stay hidden. Some deaths, Tyler realized, were only pretending to be finished. Evening settled over Cedar Hollow with deceptive gentleness, the kind that made houses glow warmly, while shadows lengthened just out of sight. Snow continued to fall in soft, persistent sheets, clinging to porch railings and frosting window panes, making every home look safer than it truly was. Tyler Reed parked his cruiser at the curb in front of a modest two-story house on Alder Street, its pale siding freshly shoveled, its front light already on, though dusk had barely arrived. He sat for a moment before getting out, watching the quiet scene, feeling the familiar tension that came whenever instinct and procedure began to drift apart. Harlan waited patiently in the passenger seat, amber eyes tracking every movement beyond the windshield. The dog's posture was relaxed but alert, his head high, ears forward, body still in that controlled readiness Tyler had come to rely on. Nothing had changed in Harlan's appearance since the cemetery. Thick black and sable coat, powerful frame, calm authority. But something had sharpened in him, a subtle tightening that told Tyler the trail had not gone cold. It had merely shifted indoors. Tyler stepped out, the cold biting through his boots, and opened the back door. "Easy," he murmured. Harlan jumped down, landing silently in the snow, tail low and steady, not wagging. They approached the house together. Megan Caldwell opened the door before Tyler could knock, as if she had been waiting just behind it. She was 38, tall and willowy, with a posture that suggested careful self-control rather than natural confidence. Her hair was a warm honey blonde, worn loose to her shoulders, in soft waves that framed a narrow face. Her skin was fair and meticulously cared for, unmarked by the cold except for a faint flush at her cheeks. She wore a cream-colored knit sweater and dark jeans, an outfit chosen to project warmth and domestic calm. Her smile appeared instantly, wide, practiced, bright enough to border on artificial. "Officer Reed," she said, voice smooth, friendly, just a touch too enthusiastic. "Is everything all right?" Tyler noticed how her eyes flicked first to him, then immediately to Harlan before returning to his face. It was a quick movement, but Harlan caught it. The dog's chest vibrated with a low, nearly inaudible sound, more felt than heard. Tyler rested a hand lightly on Harlan's harness, a silent reminder. "I just need a few minutes," Tyler said. "May we come in?" "Of course," Megan replied, stepping aside without hesitation. "Nora's upstairs doing homework." The living room was tidy to the point of sterility. Furniture arranged carefully, surfaces clear, framed photographs aligned with precise symmetry. Tyler took in the details automatically. A family portrait on the mantel showed Megan standing beside Lena Bennett years earlier, both women smiling, arms linked. Megan looked the same, Tyler noted. Lena had looked softer, her smile less guarded. Megan gestured toward the sofa. "Please." Tyler remained standing. He reached into his coat and removed the sealed evidence bag containing the silver bracelet. Megan's gaze dropped to it, and for the briefest fraction of a second, so fast Tyler might have missed it if he hadn't been watching, her smile faltered, her pupils dilated, her breath caught. Harlan growled. It was not loud, not aggressive, but it was unmistakable. Megan stiffened, hands tightening at her sides. "What is that?" she asked, her voice still pleasant, but pitched slightly higher now. "This was found today," Tyler said evenly, holding the bag at chest level, "near Lena Bennett's grave." Megan let out a small, surprised laugh. "Oh, well, that's strange, isn't it?" She pressed a hand to her chest. "Poor Nora must have dropped something while visiting." Tyler shook his head. "It was buried, and Nora says her mother never took it off." Silence filled the room, thick and immediate. Megan's laugh faded. She recovered quickly, but not completely. She crossed her arms loosely, as if cold, though the house was warm. "Grief does strange things," she said. "Children imagine connections. It's common." Harlan took one step forward, placing himself slightly between Tyler and Megan. His ears were high now, his gaze locked on her face, reading micro-expressions Tyler could not. Megan's eyes flicked downward again, then back up, her smile returning, brighter than before. "Would you like tea?" she asked. "It's freezing out there." "No," Tyler replied. "I'd like to speak with Nora." Megan hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." She turned toward the stairs. "Nora, honey, Officer Reed is here." Footsteps sounded above, slow and cautious. Nora appeared at the top of the stairs, still wearing her oversized red coat, as if she had not taken it off since the cemetery. Her hair was neatly brushed now, but her eyes were guarded. She looked from Tyler to Harlan, then to Megan. "Hi," Nora said quietly. Tyler crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. "Make sure you got home safely." "I did," Nora replied. Her eyes flicked to her aunt. "Aunt Megan made soup." "That's good," Tyler said. He straightened. "I won't keep you long." Megan's smile tightened. "Is there something wrong, officer?" "Not yet," Tyler said truthfully. He tucked the bracelet back into his coat. "But I may have more questions soon." Megan nodded, her expression smoothing into practiced concern. "We're happy to help in any way we can." Tyler turned toward the door, Harlan pivoting with him, but as they stepped outside, Nora spoke. "Officer Reed?" He turned back. Nora stood at the base of the stairs now, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Did Harlan find something bad?" Tyler chose his words carefully. "He found something that doesn't make sense yet." Nora nodded slowly. "Things that don't make sense usually mean someone's lying," she said. Megan laughed lightly from behind her. "Nora," she chided gently, "that's not very nice." But Tyler saw it. The way Megan's fingers flexed, the way her jaw tightened just a fraction. He filed it away. Outside, the cold felt sharper. Tyler clipped Harlan's leash on and walked back toward the cruiser. He did not look back, but he felt Megan's eyes on him through the window. That night, Nora lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. The radiator hissed. Wind scraped branches against siding. Downstairs, Megan moved about the kitchen, her steps measured, controlled. Nora kept her eyes closed, breathing slow, the way her mother had taught her during thunderstorms. Time passed. Then voices. Megan's voice, low, urgent, coming from the kitchen. "Everything's still fine," she whispered into the phone. "He suspects nothing. Just don't make any moves. I'll handle her." A pause. Megan exhaled sharply. "No, she doesn't know. She's just a child." Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed her face into her pillow, biting down on the urge to cry out. The words replayed in her mind, sharp and unforgiving. "I'll handle her." When the house finally went quiet again, Nora opened her eyes. Snowlight filtered through her window, painting the room in pale blue. She thought of Harlan's steady gaze, of the way he had stood between Tyler and her aunt without fear. She thought of the bracelet buried in the snow, of a grave that felt wrong in her bones. Adults, she realized, lied best when they thought they were protecting something: money, reputation, themselves. Dogs did not lie. Snow did not lie. The earth did not lie. Nora sat up slowly, a decision forming with terrifying clarity. Tomorrow she would pretend nothing was wrong. She would nod, eat soup, do her homework. But soon, very soon, she would listen to the call she felt pulling her beyond the safety of walls and words. She would trust the dog. She would trust the snow. And whatever truth was buried beneath it, she would not leave it there. Midnight wrapped Cedar Hollow in a deeper, more dangerous quiet, the kind that pressed against windows and made every sound feel exposed. Snow fell harder now, thick flakes spiraling under the street lamps like ash from an unseen fire. Nora Bennett moved through it carefully, bundled in a dark green parka that swallowed her small frame, the hood cinched tight around her face. A narrow backpack hung against her shoulders, packed with a flashlight, a bottle of water, and 2 energy bars she had taken from the kitchen drawer earlier that evening. Her boots were still a size too big, but she laced them tight and moved with the focus of someone who knew hesitation would only make things worse. She did not look back at the house on Alder Street as she slipped through the side gate. The windows glowed softly behind her, the warm yellow light lying about safety the way her aunt's smile did. Nora had learned enough to know that light could deceive. She kept her head down and followed the shoveled sidewalks toward the edge of town, breath puffing white, heart hammering so loudly she worried it might give her away. The old police outpost sat near the end of Cedar Hollow's main road, a squat brick structure that had once housed patrol units before the newer station was built closer to the highway. Its K-9 enclosure remained behind it, chain-link fencing half buried in snow, the security light flickering faintly above. Nora paused at the edge of the lot, crouching low behind a snowbank. She listened. Wind. The distant creak of a sign, nothing else. The gate to the K-9 yard stood slightly ajar, exactly as Tyler Reed had left it earlier that evening when he returned Harlan to his run. Tyler had not imagined a child would notice such details, much less act on them. Nora noticed everything now. Fear had sharpened her senses. She pushed the gate open just enough to slip through and whispered into the dark, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "Harlan, please." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shape moved within the kennel shelter. Harlan stepped forward into the thin pool of light, his black and sable coat nearly disappearing against the night. He was alert immediately, ears high, eyes fixed on Nora, with recognition rather than surprise. He did not wag his tail, he did not bark. He simply stood there, solid and composed, as if he had been waiting. Nora swallowed hard. "I think my mom's still out there," she said, words trembling but clear. "I don't know where, I just know it's not right." Harlan tilted his head slightly, listening not just to her voice but to the urgency beneath it. Then he stepped closer, pressed his nose briefly against the chain-link fence separating them, and exhaled. The sound felt like permission. Nora lifted the latch with shaking fingers. The metal was cold enough to sting. The gate opened with a soft scrape. Harlan walked out calmly, brushing past her leg, his warmth immediate and grounding. He did not run. He did not look back. He turned toward the road leading out of town and began to walk. Nora followed. They moved through Cedar Hollow like ghosts, crossing streets dusted white, passing dark storefronts and sleeping houses. Snow muffled their footsteps, and the world felt suspended, as if holding its breath. Harlan kept a steady pace, occasionally lifting his nose to test the air, then adjusting direction with subtle confidence. Nora struggled to keep up, her legs burning, lungs aching, but she did not complain. Every step carried her farther from certainty and closer to something unnamed but necessary. Beyond the last row of houses, the road began to climb. Frost-lined paths rose ahead of them, a narrow, winding stretch leading into state land where the forest thickened and the town's rules loosened their grip. The wind grew sharper here, cutting through trees and rattling bare branches together like bones. Snowdrifts deepened along the roadside, forcing Nora to step carefully to avoid sinking. Halfway up the pass, Harlan veered off the road toward a service track barely visible beneath the snow. Nora hesitated. "This isn't the trail," she whispered. Harlan stopped, turned back and looked at her. His amber eyes reflected her flashlight beam, steady and unwavering. Then he stepped forward again onto the narrow path that led away from asphalt and into the forest. The service road had once belonged to the old ranger station farther up the mountain, decommissioned years ago after budget cuts, and a series of landslides made access difficult. Now it lay hidden beneath snow and neglect, but not untouched. As Nora followed, her flashlight caught impressions in the powder, wide, shallow marks from snowmobile treads, edges still crisp. They were recent. The smell reached her next, oil and exhaust, faint but undeniable, tangled with the cleaner scent of burning wood. Nora's stomach tightened. Someone had been here, recently. The forest closed around them as they climbed, trees rising tall and close, their branches heavy with snow. The cold intensified, biting through Nora's gloves and seeping into her bones. Several times she stumbled, once catching herself on Harlan's harness as he stopped instantly, bracing himself until she regained her footing. He never pulled her forward. He waited, patient and resolute. At last, the path leveled out, opening into a small clearing. There, half buried beneath snow and draped with a weathered camouflage tarp, stood a cabin. It was modest in size, built of dark timber, its roof sagging slightly under the weight of winter. One window glowed faintly from within, the light unsteady, as though cast by a lantern rather than electricity. Smoke drifted lazily from a crooked chimney, blending with the snowfall. Nora stopped dead. The fear she had been holding at bay surged forward, sharp and overwhelming. Her knees trembled, and she nearly dropped the flashlight. "I can't," she whispered. "Harlan, I can't." Harlan stepped closer, pressing his shoulder firmly against her leg. The contact was deliberate, grounding. His body radiated warmth, steady and real. He did not whine. He did not urge. He simply stayed, a living anchor in a world that felt like it was tilting. Nora crouched, wrapping her arms around herself, breath coming in short gasps. Her mind filled with images, fire, graves, her aunt's too bright smile. What if she was wrong? What if this place held nothing but danger? She squeezed her eyes shut. Then she smelled it, faint but unmistakable. Lavender. Her mother's scent. Nora's eyes snapped open. The fear did not disappear, but it changed shape, hardening into something fierce and fragile at once. She stood slowly, wiped her nose with her sleeve, and nodded to herself. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." They approached the cabin together. The porch boards creaked under Nora's weight, loud in the stillness. She froze, listening. No voices, only the soft crackle of a fire inside and the wind worrying the trees. Harlan moved ahead, positioning himself between her and the door, his body tense now, hackles lifting slightly along his spine. This was not curiosity. This was protection. Nora reached for the door handle and hesitated. Her hand shook. She pressed her forehead briefly against the cold wood, drawing strength from somewhere deep and quiet. "Whatever's in there," she whispered to Harlan, "we face it together." She turned the handle. The door opened slowly, hinges protesting in a low groan. Warm air spilled out, carrying with it the scents of smoke, kerosene, damp wood, and beneath it all, lavender. Nora stepped inside, flashlight sweeping the small interior. The room was sparsely furnished, a rough wooden table, a kerosene heater cooling in the corner, a folded blanket on the floor. On the table lay a chipped mug, and beside it, a framed photograph turned face down. Nora picked it up with trembling hands. It was her 6th birthday. Her mother stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, smiling. Her breath hitched. Harlan moved past her, nose working along the walls. He stopped near the back of the cabin, where a section of floor looked slightly newer than the rest. He pawed at it once, then again, then sat abruptly, posture rigid. Nora stared at the spot, heart racing. "What did you find?" she whispered. Harlan did not move. He waited. Nora knelt and pressed her palm to the wood. It shifted beneath her touch. Her fingers found a seam, then a latch, cold and rough. She pulled. The panel lifted. From below came a sound so faint she almost missed it. A cough, weak, human. Nora's world narrowed to that sound. Tears sprang to her eyes as she whispered the word she had not dared say aloud until now. "Mom?" The answer did not come yet, but it was close. She could feel it rising from beneath the snow, refusing to stay buried. The door creaked open, releasing a breath of air that felt older than the forest itself. Nora froze on the threshold as the smells rushed her all at once. Damp wood, cold ash, kerosene, and beneath it, sharp and intimate enough to make her chest ache, the unmistakable scent of lavender shampoo. Her mother's shampoo, the kind Lena Bennett had bought in bulk because it was cheaper that way, the kind that lingered in towels and hugs long after bath time. Nora's throat tightened. This place was wrong, but it was also familiar in a way that hurt. The cabin interior was small, no more than one main room, its walls darkened by age and smoke. A single lantern cast a weak amber glow that flickered with every movement, making shadows stretch and recoil like living things. On the rough wooden table sat a plastic cup, cloudy with use, and beside it a framed photograph lying face up. Nora stepped forward, heart pounding, and picked it up with shaking hands. It showed her at 6 years old, missing 2 front teeth, grinning wildly, while Lena knelt behind her, arms wrapped tight around her shoulders. The glass was smudged, the frame cracked at one corner, but the image was unmistakable. Her mother had been here recently. Harlan moved past her without hesitation, his large body suddenly tense, muscles rippling beneath his thick black and sable coat. The German shepherd lowered his head, nose sweeping along the floorboards, ears angled forward so sharply they seemed to cut the air. He stopped near the back wall, over a section of floor that looked subtly different. Wood newer than the rest, its grain less worn, nails driven in at slightly uneven angles. Harlan scraped at it once with his paw, then again harder, the sound echoing too loudly in the confined space. He stopped abruptly and sat, posture rigid, eyes locked on the spot. Nora stared. Her breathing grew shallow. She knelt and pressed her palm to the wood. It shifted, not much, but enough. Her fingers traced the outline of a hidden seam, then found a cold metal latch, recessed just enough to avoid casual notice. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the flashlight. From below came a sound so faint it barely registered at first, a wet, rasping cough followed by the shallow inhale of someone fighting for breath. Time seemed to collapse inward. Nora's vision blurred, tears spilling unchecked as she whispered the word that had lived in her chest like a forbidden prayer. "Mom?" There was a pause, stretched thin as ice over deep water. Then a voice rose from below, hoarse and weak but achingly familiar. "Nora." The sound shattered her. She sobbed once, sharp and broken, then fumbled with the latch. Harlan rose instantly, pressing close to her side as the panel lifted with a soft groan, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying with it the heavier scent of damp earth and human fear. Nora descended carefully, one step at a time, Harlan's broad body blocking her from behind like a living shield. The basement was little more than a dugout space, reinforced with crude wooden supports and poured concrete walls lit by a single bare bulb hanging from a wire. And there, slumped against the far wall, was Lena Bennett. She looked smaller than Nora remembered, as though the weeks had leached substance from her. Lena was in her early 30s, with once strong shoulders now hunched inward, her dark brown hair tangled and dull, hanging in uneven strands around a face that was pale to the point of gray. Her skin clung too tightly to her cheekbones, lips cracked, eyes sunken. But those eyes, hazel flecked with green, widened in disbelief and fierce love as they locked onto her daughter. Her wrists were bound together with layers of silver duct tape, skin beneath rubbed raw and angry. "Nora," Lena whispered again, tears carving clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. "Oh God, you shouldn't be here." Nora crossed the space in a stumble and collapsed into her mother's arms. Lena couldn't hug her properly, the tape preventing it. But she leaned forward as far as she could, burying her face in Nora's hair, breathing her in as though to reassure herself this wasn't a hallucination born of hunger and fear. They clung to each other, shaking, crying softly in the dim light, while Harlan sat at the base of the stairs, ears pricked, head lifted, listening to the world above. When Lena finally pulled back, her hands trembling, she cupped Nora's face awkwardly with bound wrists. "How did you find me?" she asked, voice cracking. Nora sniffed, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "Harlan," she said simply. "He knew. He found your bracelet by the grave. I knew then something was wrong." Lena's eyes flicked to the staircase, understanding dawning with a bitterness that twisted her expression. "Megan," she said. The name tasted like rust. "She planned it, the fire, the insurance, all of it. She didn't want to kill me, she just needed me gone long enough." Rage flared hot and sudden in Nora's chest. But before she could speak, a new sound cut through the air above them, the distant whine of a snowmobile engine, growing louder. Harlan's body stiffened. A low growl rolled from his chest, deep and resonant, vibrating through the floorboards. Lena's eyes widened in terror. "She's back," she whispered. "She comes every few days. Nora, you need to hide." "There's nowhere," Nora whispered back, fear crashing over her in a wave. The engine cut off outside. Footsteps crunched across snow. The cabin door opened, light spilling across the floorboards above. Megan Caldwell's voice floated down, tight and sharp with surprise. "Hello? Who's here?" Harlan moved then, bounding up the stairs in 2 powerful strides, planting himself at the top with his hackles raised, teeth bared just enough to warn. His growl filled the cabin, a sound of absolute refusal. Megan appeared in the doorway to the basement, snow clinging to her boots, her cream sweater now hidden beneath a heavy winter coat. Up close, her face looked different, drawn, eyes shadowed, the carefully maintained calm fractured by shock. When she saw Lena alive and Nora kneeling beside her, the color drained from her face. "What have you done?" Megan breathed, voice trembling. "Nora, you don't understand." Before she could finish, red and blue lights flashed through the cabin windows, washing the walls in harsh color. Shouted commands cut through the night. "Police! Megan Caldwell, step away from the stairs!" Tyler Reed entered moments later, snow dusting his dark navy coat, gray eyes blazing with controlled fury. He was flanked by two uniformed deputies. Deputy Mark Ellison, a stocky man in his 40s with a thick beard and steady demeanor, and Deputy Rachel Moore, younger, tall, and athletic, her dark hair pulled into a tight braid, jaw set with focus. Tyler's gaze swept the scene in an instant. Harlan guarding the stairs, Nora and Lena below, Megan frozen in shock. And he exhaled sharply, relief and anger colliding in his chest. "Cuff her," Tyler said, voice steady. Megan stumbled backward, shaking her head. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she cried as the deputies moved in. "I was desperate. I just needed time. She was supposed to be released once the money cleared." Ellison snapped the cuffs on with practiced efficiency. "Kidnapping and insurance fraud don't come with a grace period," he muttered. Tyler descended into the basement, kneeling beside Lena with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the scene above. "You're safe now," he said. "We've got you." As the deputies cut the tape from Lena's wrists, Nora finally let go of the breath she'd been holding for weeks. Her legs went weak and she sank against Harlan, burying her face in his thick fur. "You saved her," she whispered. "You saved my mom." Harlan stood perfectly still, accepting her weight, his tail giving one slow, solemn wag. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering tracks, softening edges. But inside the small cabin and far away in Cedar Hollow, something fundamental had shifted. Truth, once buried, had been unearthed, and winter, for the first time, felt clean. In the end, the miracle was never just the rescue. It was not only that a mother was found alive beneath the floorboards, or that a crime hidden beneath snow and silence was finally exposed. The true miracle was this: truth refused to stay buried. In moments when every adult explanation said, "Move on," when paperwork said, "Case closed," when grief said, "Accept the loss," something greater was still at work. A child's faith, a loyal heart with 4 paws, and a quiet hand of God guiding what human eyes could not see. Sometimes God does not arrive with thunder. Sometimes he arrives as an instinct that will not rest, as a dog that refuses to obey a command because love demands otherwise, as a child brave enough to ask the question everyone else is afraid to hear. In everyday life, we face our own buried truths, moments when something feels wrong, but the world tells us it's easier to stay silent. Times when hope seems foolish, faith feels fragile, and believing costs more than giving up. This story reminds us that faith is not blindness. Faith is courage. Faith is listening when the answer comes from an unexpected place. Faith is trusting that God is still working, even when the snow keeps falling. If this story touched your heart, let it be a reminder to listen more closely, to trust the quiet warnings, to protect the innocent, to love fiercely, and to believe that no darkness is too deep for truth to rise. May God bless every person watching this story. May He protect your families, guide your steps, and give you strength when faith feels heavy. May He place loyal hearts beside you when you need them most. And if this story moved you even a little, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories of faith, loyalty, and quiet miracles. Because sometimes the miracle you need is the story you almost scrolled past. God bless you.